morning sun peeked through the thin curtains of Rosa Martinez's small apartment. At 83, Rosa still woke up at 6 o'clock sharp every day, a habit from decades of rising early to prepare breakfast for her husband and 5 children. Though her husband had passed away 3 years ago and her children had long since moved away with families of their own, old habits stayed with Rosa like loyal friends. She sat up slowly, her joints protesting after a night's rest. The small calendar on her bedside table showed it was Tuesday. Bread day, she whispered to herself with a smile. Every Tuesday, the corner market received fresh bread from the local bakery, and Rosa never missed the chance to buy a warm loaf. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle hum of the old refrigerator. Photos covered nearly every wall. Wedding pictures, children's graduations, grandchildren's birthdays. Rosa's favorite was a family photo taken at her 80th birthday party, everyone squeezed together on her small sofa, laughing as they tried to fit in the frame. "Good morning, Roberto," she said to her husband's picture on the nightstand. Talking to him had become her morning ritual. "Another beautiful day. I'll bring home that sourdough bread you always loved." After a simple breakfast of coffee and toast, Rosa dressed carefully in a blue floral dress she had owned for years but still looked nearly new. She combed her silver hair back into a neat bun and added a touch of pink lipstick. Another habit she wasn't willing to give up. From the top drawer of her dresser, she pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was her wedding ring, which had grown too loose for her finger years ago. Rosa slipped the chain it hung on around her neck, tucking the ring beneath her dress where it rested close to her heart. She only wore it this way on special days, and bread days were special enough. Rosa checked her purse, wallet with exactly $43, house key, handkerchief, and a small photo album of her grandchildren. She nodded, satisfied that everything was in order, and headed out the door. The 3-block walk to the corner market took Rosa about 20 minutes. She used to make the trip in less than 10, but these days her pace was slower, more deliberate. Her doctor had suggested using a cane, but Rosa refused. "My legs still work just fine," she told him stubbornly. The neighborhood had changed over the decades. When Rosa and Roberto first moved in 50 years ago, they knew everyone on their street. Now most faces were unfamiliar, though a few shopkeepers still greeted her by name. "Morning, Mrs. Martinez," called Mr. Chen from his flower shop as Rosa passed. He was arranging bright yellow sunflowers in buckets outside his store. "Good morning. Those flowers are brighter than the sun today," Rosa replied, pausing to admire them. "Take one, please." "For my favorite customer," Mr. Chen said, holding out the biggest sunflower. Rosa accepted it with a warm smile. "You're too kind. Thank you." She continued her walk with the sunflower in hand, her step a little lighter. The street was busy this morning. A young mother pushed a stroller past Rosa, nodding politely. 2 businessmen hurried by, deep in conversation about numbers and deadlines. A group of school children waited at the bus stop, their backpacks nearly as big as they were. Rosa noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across from the hardware store. It looked expensive and out of place in their modest neighborhood. A few people were gathered nearby, pointing and whispering. Rosa wondered what the fuss was about, but didn't stop to ask. As she approached the corner market, the smell of fresh bread reached her before she even opened the door. The bell above the entrance jingled as she stepped inside. "There she is." "Right on time," called Tony, the market owner's son. Now in his 40s, Tony had been a small boy when Rosa first started shopping here. "We saved your loaf, Mrs. M." The market was small but packed with everything from fresh produce to household supplies. Rosa knew every aisle by heart. She picked up a small basket and began her usual route. Bread first, then a few apples, a small carton of milk, and today, a special treat of chocolate cookies for herself. "Did you hear about the movie they're filming downtown?" asked Lisa, the cashier, as she rang up Rosa's items. "Some big action stars in town. That's why there are all these fancy cars around." "Is that what all the excitement is about?" Rosa asked, thinking of the black SUV and the small crowd. "Yep. My cousin's friend works security for the movie. Says They're filming some big chase scene this afternoon. Lisa carefully placed Rosa's bread in a paper bag. That'll be $22.17. Rosa opened her wallet and counted out the exact change, a habit from years when every penny mattered for a family of 7. As she did, she noticed through the store window that the black SUV had now parked right outside the market. The windows were too dark to see inside, but she could make out the silhouette of someone sitting in the driver's seat. "Here you go, dear," Rosa said, handing the money to Lisa. "You want help carrying these bags home?" Tony asked, as he did every Tuesday. And as she did every Tuesday, Rosa shook her head. "Thank you, but I can manage. The walk is good for me." "Well, be careful out there. There have been some reports of trouble in the neighborhood. Some young guys bothering people." Tony frowned, concerned. "Don't you worry about me," Rosa assured him with a confident smile. "I've lived in this neighborhood longer than those boys have been alive. They should be careful of me." Tony and Lisa laughed, but exchanged worried glances as Rosa gathered her bags and headed for the door. Outside, the sun was higher now, warming the morning air. Rosa adjusted her bags in her hands and started her walk home, the sunflower poking cheerfully from one of the paper sacks. She decided to take a slightly different route today, down Cedar Street where the maple trees provided nice shade. As she turned the corner, Rosa didn't notice the black SUV pull away from the market and follow slowly, keeping a careful distance behind her. Nor did she notice 3 young men who had been lounging against a wall suddenly straighten up and begin walking in her direction, their eyes fixed on her shopping bags and the chain around her neck where her wedding ring occasionally caught the sunlight. Rosa was thinking about the fresh bread she would enjoy for lunch, unaware that her usual Tuesday routine was about to become anything but usual. Rosa turned onto Cedar Street, enjoying the cool shade from the maple trees that lined both sides. The street was quieter than the main road, with fewer people and cars. She liked this peaceful stretch of her walk, where the only sounds were birds chirping and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her at first. 3 young men had fallen into step about 20 yards back. They walked with a swagger, occasionally nudging each other and snickering. The tallest one, wearing a red baseball cap turned backward, kept pointing at Rosa's neck, where her wedding ring on its chain occasionally glinted in the patches of sunlight, breaking through the trees. "That's her," he whispered to his friends. "The old lady from the shop. Bet that's real gold around her neck." His friend in the blue jacket nodded. "And check those shopping bags. Just came from the market. Probably got cash in her purse, too." The third young man, smaller than the others but with a mean look in his eyes, seemed nervous. "I don't know about this, guys. She looks really old." "That's the point, dummy," said Redcap. "Easy target, nobody's around, quick and simple." They had been working this neighborhood for weeks now. Their routine was always the same. Find someone vulnerable, intimidate them into handing over valuables, and disappear before police could respond. So far, they'd gotten away with it, growing bolder with each success. Rosa was humming softly to herself, a tune Roberto used to sing while he cooked Sunday dinner. Lost in memories, she didn't notice when the 3 young men sped up their pace and spread out, one moving to each side of the street, while Redcap stayed directly behind her. Meanwhile, the black SUV that had been parked outside the market had turned onto Cedar Street. The driver slowed down, watching the scene unfold through the tinted windows. Something didn't feel right about those 3 guys following the elderly woman. Rosa finally sensed something was wrong when she heard quick footsteps coming up behind her. She turned just as Redcap moved in front of her, blocking her path. The other 2 quickly closed in from the sides, forming a tight circle around her. "Well, hello there, Grandma," said Redcap with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nice day for a walk, isn't it?" Rosa clutched her shopping bags tighter and tried to step around him. "Excuse me, young man. I need to get home." Blue Jacket stepped closer. "What's the rush? We just want to talk." His eyes darted to the chain around her neck. "That's a pretty necklace you got there." Rosa's heart began to pound, but she kept her expression calm. She'd lived through too much in her 83 years to show fear easily. "My husband gave it to me. Now please let me pass." "Your husband, huh?" said Redcap, moving even closer. "I bet he'd want you to share with those less fortunate, like us." He reached out toward the chain. Rosa jerked back, bumping into the third young man who had moved behind her. Her sunflower fell from the shopping bag onto the sidewalk. "Don't touch me," she said firmly, her voice stronger than she felt. "I don't have anything worth taking. We'll be the judge of that," Blue Jacket sneered, grabbing at her purse. Rosa held on tight, years of determination in her grip. "No, let go." Her voice echoed down the empty street. Inside the black SUV, the driver watched the confrontation with growing anger. He had been in town for the movie shoot, trying to enjoy a quiet morning before filming started in the afternoon. He'd stopped at the market for coffee when he noticed the elderly woman and then spotted the three suspicious men following her as she left. His instincts had been right. He pulled the SUV to the curb and cut the engine. Back on the sidewalk, Rosa was putting up a surprisingly strong fight. When Blue Jacket yanked at her purse again, she swung her shopping bag at his head. The bread loaf inside made a solid thump against his ear. "Ow, you crazy old—" He grabbed her arm roughly. "Hey," Redcap hissed. "Easy, man. Don't leave marks." Rosa felt a flash of pain in her wrist, but didn't let go of her purse. "Help," she called out, though the street seemed deserted. "Nobody's coming, lady," said the nervous one, looking around anxiously. "Just give us the ring and your money and we'll leave you alone." "This ring is the only thing I have left of my Roberto," Rosa said, her voice shaking with anger rather than fear. "I'd rather die than give it to thugs like you." Redcap's face darkened. "That can be arranged, old woman." Blue Jacket suddenly spotted the black SUV parked nearby. "Guys, someone's watching." "So what?" Redcap didn't even turn to look. "Probably just someone afraid to get involved. They never do." He reached for Rosa's chain. "Now hand it over before you get hurt." Rosa's fingers found the sunflower that had fallen to the ground. In one swift motion that surprised even her, she jabbed its stem toward Redcap's face. The sunflower wasn't much of a weapon, but it caught him off guard, the yellow petals slapping against his cheek. "What the—" He stumbled back, more from surprise than pain. That small moment of confusion was all Rosa needed. She tried to push past them, but Blue Jacket recovered quickly and grabbed her shopping bags, tearing them from her grip. Apples rolled across the sidewalk. The milk carton burst open, white liquid spreading across the pavement. "Now look what you made me do," he growled, advancing on her again. Rosa backed up against a tree, her purse clutched to her chest. Despite her brave front, fear was setting in. Her heart raced dangerously, and she felt lightheaded. "Please," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "I'm an old woman. I have grandchildren waiting for me to visit this weekend. Should have thought about them before you decided to be difficult," Redcap said, reaching for her again. Rosa closed her eyes, bracing herself, when suddenly the sound of a car door slamming echoed through the quiet street. Heavy footsteps approached rapidly. "Is there a problem here?" The voice was deep, gravelly, and unmistakably authoritative. Rosa opened her eyes to see a large, muscular, bald man standing a few feet away. He wore a simple black t-shirt that strained against his impressive build, dark jeans and sunglasses. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, but Rosa couldn't place him. The three young men froze, turning toward the newcomer. Recognition dawned on their faces almost immediately. "No way," whispered the nervous one. "Is that—" Blue Jacket's mouth hung open. Redcap recovered first. "Mind your own business, man. This doesn't concern you." The newcomer took off his sunglasses, revealing intense eyes that took in the scene in one sweep. The terrified elderly woman, her spilled groceries, the three young men with predatory stances. "When I see three guys threatening someone's grandmother," he said, his voice deceptively calm, "it becomes my business." He stepped closer, and even Redcap seemed to shrink a little. "Now I suggest you boys walk away while you still can." Blue Jacket nudged Redcap. "Dude, I don't care who he is." Redcap cut him off, though his voice had less conviction now. He turned back to the newcomer. "Look, man, we're just having a conversation with our friend here." "Some friendship," the man said, moving to stand beside Rosa. "You okay, ma'am?" Rosa nodded. still clutching her purse. They were trying to take my wedding ring and my groceries. Her voice steadied with the presence of an ally. The man's expression hardened as he turned back to the three bullies. You have exactly 5 seconds to leave before I show you what happens to men who pick on the elderly. The nervous one was already backing away. Come on, guys, let's go. This isn't worth it. Blue Jacket seemed torn, but self-preservation was winning out. Yeah, let's bounce. But Redcap wasn't ready to back down. His pride was on the line now. You think you're tough because you play tough guys in movies? This is real life, not Hollywood. The newcomer didn't respond to the taunt. He simply began counting. 1. Come on, man, Blue Jacket pleaded with Redcap. That's Vin 2. The man continued, taking a step forward. Redcap's hand moved to his pocket, where the outline of something, perhaps a knife, was visible. You should have stayed in your fancy car. 3. The tension on the quiet street had reached a breaking point. Rosa held her breath, unsure what would happen next, but somehow certain that this unexpected guardian was more than capable of handling the situation. What she didn't expect was just how quickly everything was about to change. The world seemed to hold its breath for a moment on Cedar Street. The scattered apples from Rosa's grocery bag lay forgotten on the sidewalk. The spilled milk formed a small puddle that reflected the sunlight filtering through the maple trees. In that moment of perfect tension, Rosa noticed how the light caught the bald man's features, highlighting the determination in his eyes. 4. The man continued, his voice dropping even lower. There was something about the way he said it, like a promise rather than a threat. Redcap glanced at his friends, realizing he was increasingly alone in this standoff. The nervous one had already backed up several steps. Blue Jacket was shifting, his weight from foot to foot, clearly wanting to run. 5. The word hung in the air. Redcap made his decision. In one swift motion, he pulled something from his pocket. It was indeed a small knife, the blade catching the sunlight. Big mistake, the bald man said quietly. What happened next occurred so quickly that Rosa would later struggle to describe it to the police. The bald man moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible for someone of his size. He stepped forward, his right hand catching Redcap's wrist mid-swing, twisting it away from his body. With his other hand, he delivered a quick strike to Redcap's shoulder, not to injure but to disable. The knife clattered to the sidewalk. Before Redcap could even register what had happened, the bald man had spun him around, arm locked behind his back, and pushed him face first against the trunk of a maple tree. I hate bullies, the man said calmly into Redcap's ear, though loud enough for everyone to hear. Blue Jacket finally found his courage, or perhaps his foolishness. He rushed forward with a yell, swinging wildly. The bald man, still holding Redcap against the tree with one hand, simply sidestepped the attack. As Blue Jacket stumbled past, the man hooked his foot, sending him sprawling onto the sidewalk. The nervous one, seeing his friend subdued so easily, turned to run. But the bald man's voice stopped him. Stay right there. It wasn't shouted, but the command in it was unmistakable. You're not going anywhere. The nervous one froze, then slowly turned back around, hands raised in surrender. Less than 10 seconds had passed since Redcap had pulled the knife. All three bullies were now effectively neutralized, one pinned against a tree, one flat on his stomach on the sidewalk, and one standing with his hands in the air, trembling visibly. Rosa watched, in amazement. The man moved with the fluid grace of someone who had trained for years. Every action was controlled, precise, and remarkably restrained. He could have hurt them badly, she realized, but had chosen not to. Ma'am, would you mind taking my phone? From my back pocket? The bald man asked Rosa, still holding Redcap firmly against the tree. We need to call the police. Rosa approached cautiously and retrieved the sleek smartphone. Which button do I press? She asked, examining the device. Just say call 911 and it'll dial, he replied. Rosa spoke to the phone, and seconds later, was connected to emergency services. She explained the situation as calmly as she could, giving their location on Cedar Street. While she spoke to the dispatcher, the bald man addressed the three young men. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down on the curb, nice and easy, and wait for the police to arrive. You're going to return this lady's belongings, and you're going to apologize to her, sincerely." Blue Jacket had picked himself up from the sidewalk, rubbing his elbow where he'd landed hard. "Man, we didn't know she was friends with Vin Diesel," he muttered. "She wasn't," the man, apparently Vin Diesel, replied. "But she is now." He guided Redcap to the curb and motioned for the others to join him. All three sat down, the fight completely gone from them. Blue Jacket placed Rosa's purse on the sidewalk, between them. "The ring, too," Diesel said, noticing that Redcap was clutching something in his fist. Redcap reluctantly opened his hand, revealing Rosa's wedding ring on its chain. In the scuffle, he had managed to snatch it from her neck. He placed it beside the purse, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Rosa finished her call and handed the phone back to Diesel. "The police are on their way. 5 minutes, they said." "Thank you, ma'am," Diesel replied with a respectful nod. For the first time, Rosa really looked at her rescuer. Now she understood why he had seemed familiar. "You're that actor, aren't you? From those car movies my grandson loves." Diesel smiled, the expression softening his intense features. "Yes, ma'am. I'm in town filming the new one, actually." "My grandson Miguel has seen every single one of those movies at least 3 times, Rosa said, her voice steadying as the immediate danger passed. "He would never believe this." "Well, we'll have to make sure he does," Diesel replied. He turned his attention back to the 3 young men sitting on the curb. "Now about that apology." The nervous one spoke first, surprising everyone. "I'm really sorry, ma'am. I didn't want to do this." His voice cracked. "They said nobody would get hurt." Blue Jacket stared at the ground. "Sorry," he mumbled, barely audible. Redcap remained silent, his face a mask of resentment. Diesel stepped closer to him. "Your turn." "Sorry," Redcap finally said through gritted teeth. "Not good enough," Diesel said. "Look at her. Tell her what you're sorry for." Redcap raised his eyes to meet Rosa's. Something in her steady gaze seemed to reach him. Perhaps it was the dignity with which she stood there, despite her spilled groceries and the chain torn from her neck. Or perhaps it was seeing his own grandmother reflected in her eyes. "I'm sorry for trying to take your ring," he said, his voice softer now. "And for scaring you, and ruining your groceries. It was wrong." Rosa nodded once, accepting the apology, without words. In the distance, police sirens grew louder. Diesel collected Rosa's wedding ring and purse from the sidewalk and handed them to her. The chain had broken when Redcap yanked it, but the ring itself was undamaged. "I have a safe place for this," Rosa said, tucking the ring into her purse. She looked down at her scattered groceries with a sigh. "Though I'm not sure what to do about my shopping." "Don't worry about that," Diesel assured her. "We'll get you new groceries after the police take our statements." 2 police cars pulled up to the curb, lights flashing. 4 officers got out, hands resting cautiously on their holsters until they assessed the situation. "Over here, officers," Diesel called, waving them over. The first officer approached, recognition dawning on his face as he got closer. "Mr. Diesel, didn't expect to see you at a disturbance call." "I was just in the right place at the right time," Diesel replied. "These 3 were trying to rob this lady." He gestured to Rosa, who stood straight and composed despite the ordeal. The officers took control of the situation quickly, handcuffing the 3 young men and separating them for questioning. One officer, a kind-faced woman named Officer Patel, according to her nameplate, took Rosa aside. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" she asked gently. "Just my wrist a little," Rosa admitted, showing the red marks where Blue Jacket had grabbed her. "And my pride, perhaps." "You fought back against 3 men. A quarter of your age," Officer Patel said with admiration. "I'd say your pride should be just fine." As Rosa gave her statement, she watched Diesel talking with the other officers. There was no arrogance in his manner, no celebrity attitude. He pointed to the knife still lying on the sidewalk, demonstrated how Redcap had swung it, and described the events in clear, concise terms. When he finished, he walked over to join Rosa. "They want to take these guys to the station," Apparently, they matched the description of suspects in several other robberies in the area. Good, Rosa said firmly. They should learn their lesson. Officer Patel smiled. With your statements, plus the knife as evidence, they're looking at serious charges. They won't be bothering anyone else for a while. As the police cars drove away with the three young men in the back seats, Rosa and Diesel stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by the aftermath of the confrontation. Scattered apples, spilled milk, and the slightly crushed sunflower. I don't know how to thank you, Rosa said, looking up at the man who towered over her small frame. No need for thanks, Diesel replied. I'm just glad I was driving by. He glanced at his watch. I have a few hours before I need to be on set. How about I help you get home and then we replace those groceries? Rosa hesitated, still processing the morning's events. That's very kind, but I don't want to be a bother. It's no bother at all, he assured her. Besides, I'd like to hear more about this grandson who's such a big fan. Rosa smiled, the events of the past hour already beginning to feel surreal. Well, if you're sure you don't mind. Diesel bent down to pick up the sunflower, which had somehow survived the chaos relatively intact. He handed it to Rosa with a gentle smile. I'm positive. Together they walked toward his SUV, an unlikely pair brought together by circumstance. As Diesel opened the passenger door for her, Rosa couldn't help but think what a story this would make for her family. The day had started with her normal routine, but had taken the most extraordinary turn, and somehow she knew this was just the beginning. The black SUV pulled up in front of Rosa's apartment building, a modest 3-story structure with window boxes full of geraniums on the first floor. Rosa noticed how Diesel's vehicle seemed out of place in her neighborhood, drawing curious glances from people passing by. This is me, she said, pointing to the building. Second floor, apartment 2B. Diesel parked and came around to open her door. Let me help you up with your things, he said, gathering the replacement groceries they had purchased on the way. The store owner had nearly fainted when Vin Diesel walked in with Rosa, asking for bread, milk, and apples. You really don't need to, Rosa protested, but there was less conviction in her voice now. The events of the morning had left her more shaken than she wanted to admit, and the company was welcome. I insist, Diesel said with a warm smile. Besides, I'd like to make sure you're settled. They made their way up the single flight of stairs, Rosa moving slower than usual. Her wrist was beginning to show a bruise where Blue Jacket had grabbed her, and her heart was still racing a bit from the excitement. At her door, Rosa fumbled with her keys, her hands trembling slightly. Diesel waited patiently, balancing the grocery bags in one arm. Inside, the apartment was exactly as Rosa had left it that morning. Neat, modest, filled with mementos of a long life well lived. Diesel looked around with genuine interest, taking in the family photos that covered nearly every surface. You have a beautiful home, he said, placing the groceries on the small kitchen counter. Thank you, it's not much, but it's been home for 50 years. Rosa gestured to the sofa. Please sit. Would you like some coffee? It's the least I can offer after what you did. Diesel nodded. Coffee would be great, thank you. While Rosa busied herself in the kitchen, Diesel studied the photos more closely. One in particular caught his eye, a black and white wedding photo of a young Rosa with a handsome man in a formal suit. Is this your husband? He asked when Rosa returned with 2 mugs of coffee. Rosa smiled, setting the mugs on the coffee table. Yes, that's my Roberto. We were married for 57 years before he passed. Diesel picked up his coffee. That's remarkable. 57 years. It would have been 60 this December, Rosa said, touching the spot on her chest where her wedding ring usually hung. She had placed it safely in its velvet pouch after they returned. The chain needs to be fixed. I know someone who can do that, Diesel offered. A jeweler on set. He handles all the prop jewelry, but he's actually a master craftsman. That's very kind, but I insist, Diesel said, his voice gentle but firm. It would be my honor. Rosa studied him for a moment, then nodded. Thank you. They sipped their coffee in comfortable silence for a moment. Through the window, the sounds of the neighborhood filtered in. Children playing, cars passing, the distant wail of a siren. "Have you always lived in Los Angeles?" Diesel asked. Rosa nodded. "Since I was 20, I came from a small town in Mexico looking for work. Met Roberto at a dance hall downtown 3 months later." Her eyes twinkled at the memory. "He stepped on my toes twice, then bought me a soda to apologize." Diesel laughed, a deep, genuine sound. "Love at first sight?" "For him, maybe. I made him work a little harder." Rosa smiled. "We were married 6 months later. Everybody said it wouldn't last. They were wrong. Very wrong." Rosa gestured to a photo of 5 children. "We had our first baby a year later, then 4 more after that, all grown now with children of their own." "Your grandson Miguel, he's a fan of the movies?" Diesel asked, remembering their earlier conversation. Rosa's face lit up. "Oh yes, he's 16 now. Wants to be a stunt driver because of those movies. His mother, my daughter Gloria, worries endlessly about it." Diesel chuckled. "It's not as dangerous as it looks. Everything is carefully planned." "That's what I tell her. But mothers worry." Rosa sipped her coffee. "She worries about me living alone too, but I manage just fine." "You more than manage," Diesel said seriously. "The way you handled those 3 today, that was impressive." Rosa waved dismissively. "I was terrified. Being brave isn't about not feeling fear," Diesel replied. "It's about what you do despite the fear. You fought back. You protected what was important to you." Rosa considered this. "I suppose I did." She glanced at a photo of Roberto. "He always said I was stubborn as a mula." He meant it as a compliment, I'm sure. "Oh, absolutely." Rosa laughed. "It's why he loved me." Their conversation was interrupted by Rosa's phone ringing. She excused herself and answered it. "Gloria." "Yes, I'm fine. No, nothing's wrong." She paused, listening. "Actually, something did happen today, but I'm perfectly all right." Another pause. No need to come over. I have company at the moment." Diesel could hear the concerned voice on the other end growing louder. "You won't believe me if I tell you," Rosa said, a smile spreading across her face. She looked at Diesel and raised her eyebrows questioningly. He nodded, understanding her unspoken request. "Why don't you talk to him yourself?" She handed the phone to Diesel, who took it with a smile. "Hello, Gloria. This is Vin Diesel." "Yes, that Vin Diesel. I had the pleasure of meeting your mother today." Rosa watched as he explained the situation to her daughter, downplaying the danger and emphasizing Rosa's courage. His deep voice was reassuring, and she could see her daughter's panic subsiding even from this end of the conversation. "She's absolutely fine. Yes, I understand your concern." "No, the police have them in custody." "Of course, I made sure she got home safely." He laughed at something Gloria said. She mentioned that. "Miguel sounds like a great kid." After a few more minutes, he handed the phone back to Rosa, who finished the conversation with her daughter. "She didn't believe it was really you until you mentioned Miguel," Rosa said after hanging up. "Now she wants to come over with the whole family." "That might be a bit much for today," Diesel suggested gently. "You've had quite a morning." Rosa nodded, gratefully. "That's what I told her. Tomorrow is soon enough." She sat back down, wincing slightly as she jarred her bruised wrist. Diesel noticed immediately. "We should put some ice on that." Before Rosa could protest, he was in her kitchen, opening cabinets until he found a clean dish towel. He filled it with ice from the freezer and brought it back to her. "Here," he said, carefully placing it on her wrist. "This will help with the swelling." Rosa accepted the makeshift ice pack. "You're very kind. Just returning the kindness you've shown me." Diesel sat back down. "It's not often I get to enjoy a quiet conversation and good coffee without cameras or reporters around." "I imagine it must be difficult being famous," Rosa said thoughtfully. "Never having privacy." Diesel nodded. "It has its challenges, but it also has moments like this. Unexpected connections that remind me why I do what I do." They talked for another hour, exchanging stories. Diesel told her about growing up in New York, his early struggles as an actor, and his passion for filmmaking. Rosa shared tales of raising 5 children on a tight budget, of neighborhood block parties that lasted until dawn, and of teaching herself English by watching soap operas. Eventually, Diesel glanced at his watch. "I should probably get going. We start filming at 2. Rosa nodded, surprised at her own disappointment. "Of course, I've kept you too long." "Not at all," Diesel assured her. "This has been the highlight of my day." He stood, and Rosa walked him to the door. At the threshold, he turned to her. "I'd like to invite you and your family to visit the set tomorrow if you're feeling up to it. Miguel especially might enjoy seeing how the stunts are done." Rosa's eyes widened. "Really? He would be over the moon." "Absolutely. I'll send a car. For you all around noon, if that works." Diesel pulled out his phone. "What's your number? I'll text you the details." They exchanged contact information, and Diesel promised to have someone pick up her wedding ring later that day to have the chain repaired. As he was about to leave, Rosa impulsively reached out and took his hand. Her small, weathered fingers were almost lost in his large palm. "Thank you," she said simply. "Not just for the rescue, but for the kindness after." Diesel squeezed her hand gently. "The pleasure was mine, Rosa. Truly." After he left, Rosa stood at her window, watching as he got into his SUV. Several neighbors had gathered to stare, and she smiled as Diesel patiently signed a few autographs before driving away. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls. First Gloria called back, then her other children, then several neighbors who had heard rumors about Rosa's adventure. By evening, the story had grown to epic proportions. According to Mrs. Patel down the hall, Vin Diesel had single-handedly fought off a dozen armed gangsters to save Rosa. Rosa didn't bother correcting the exaggerations. The truth was exciting enough. As promised, a young woman from the film production arrived that evening to collect Rosa's wedding ring, promising to have it back by morning with a new, stronger chain. After dinner, Rosa sat in her favorite chair, by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her wrist still ached, and she knew she would be stiff and sore tomorrow. But she felt strangely invigorated. For years, she had followed the same routines, taken the same paths, lived within the comfortable boundaries of her familiar world. Today had reminded her that life could still surprise her, that adventures could find you at any age. She picked up the sunflower, now in a vase on her windowsill, the one that had briefly been her only weapon against the bullies. It had wilted, slightly, but was still vibrant and defiant. "Well, Roberto," she said aloud to her husband's photo, "I think tomorrow is going to be quite interesting." The photo seemed to smile back at her in the fading light, as if he was sharing in her excitement from wherever he was now. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening. Children were called in for dinner, shops closed for the night, and streetlights flickered on one by one. On Cedar Street, there was no sign of the morning's drama. No spilled milk, no scattered apples, no evidence of how 3 bullies had picked on the wrong elderly woman, and in doing so, had unknowingly set in motion events that would change many lives. Rosa Martinez, 83 years old and suddenly the most talked-about person in the neighborhood, smiled as she imagined Miguel's face when he met his hero tomorrow. Some days were ordinary, and some days rewrote the story of your life. Today had definitely been the latter. She closed her eyes not to sleep but to savor the moment, this unexpected chapter in her long and mostly predictable life. Tomorrow would bring new excitement, but for now she was content to sit quietly and appreciate how wonderfully unpredictable life could be, even after 83 years of living it. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the California sun streaming through Rosa's kitchen window as she prepared breakfast. She had barely slept, her mind too full of yesterday's events and anticipation for today's adventure. Her phone had been buzzing since 7 with messages from her children and grandchildren, all excited about the upcoming set visit. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Opening it, she found a smiling young woman holding a small velvet box. "Mrs. Martinez? I'm Lucia from the production team. Mr. Diesel asked me to deliver this personally. Rosa invited her in and opened the box. Inside lay her wedding ring, now hanging from a beautiful gold chain that looked both stronger and more elegant than her old one. "It's beautiful," Rosa breathed, lifting it carefully. "Mr. Diesel had it specially made," Lucia explained. "The jeweler worked through the night." Rosa slipped the chain over her head, the familiar weight of Roberto's ring once again resting against her heart. "Please thank him for me." "You can thank him yourself," Lucia smiled. "I'm here to take you to the set." Mr. Diesel arranged for a car, but when I mentioned I was coming to deliver the necklace, he asked if I could drive you instead. "Your family will be picked up separately." Rosa touched the ring through her blouse. "Let me just get my purse." The drive downtown took them through parts of Los Angeles Rosa rarely visited anymore. The city had changed so much over the decades, growing upward and outward, yet somehow still feeling like home. "Have you worked with Mr. Diesel long?" Rosa asked as they navigated through traffic. Lucia nodded. "3 films now. He's one of the good ones, treats everyone with respect from the director to the coffee runners." Rosa wasn't surprised. "He seemed very genuine." "Oh, he is," Lucia assured her, "which is why everyone was talking about you yesterday. Vin doesn't usually bring visitors to set." They arrived at a blocked-off street where security guards checked their credentials before waving them through. Huge trailers lined one side, while cameras, lights, and various equipment filled the other. People hurried about with purpose, some talking into headsets, others carrying costumes or props. Lucia parked and led Rosa through the controlled chaos, occasionally stopping to introduce her to crew members. Everyone seemed to know who she was already, greeting her warmly and often adding, "We heard what happened yesterday. You're a legend now." Rosa blushed at the attention but enjoyed the behind-the-scenes glimpse of movie-making. It was like a small, industrious city that would disappear in a few days, leaving no trace behind except on film. "Rosa." The familiar, deep voice cut through the noise. Vin Diesel strode toward them, dressed in character for the film. Dark cargo pants, a fitted black t-shirt, and heavy boots. He looked even more imposing than yesterday, but his smile was just as warm as he reached them. "You made it," he said, giving her a gentle hug. "How's the wrist?" "Much better," Rosa assured him, though the bruise had darkened overnight. "And thank you for the chain, it's beautiful." Diesel touched the ring hanging from her neck briefly. "It suits you, a strong chain for a strong woman." Before Rosa could respond, a voice called out, "Grandma!" She turned to see her grandson Miguel running toward her, followed more sedately by her daughter Gloria, son-in-law Rafael, and 3 other grandchildren. Miguel's eyes were wide with disbelief as he looked from his grandmother to Vin Diesel, and back again. "Is it true?" he asked breathlessly. "Did you really fight off thieves with a sunflower? And then Mr. Diesel came and—" Rosa laughed. "The story gets more dramatic every time it's told." She looked at her daughter. "Gloria, this is Vin Diesel. Mr. Diesel, my daughter Gloria and her family." Gloria stepped forward, still looking slightly stunned. "Mr. Diesel, I can't thank you enough for helping my mother yesterday." "Please call me Vin," he replied, shaking her hand. "And your mother helped herself quite a bit before I arrived." Miguel was practically vibrating with excitement. "Mom said you beat up 3 guys in like 10 seconds. Diesel chuckled. "It wasn't quite like that." He turned to Rafael. "Good to meet you, sir." Rafael, who seemed the least starstruck of the group, nodded respectfully. "Thank you for looking out for Rosa. She's the heart of our family. I could tell that right away," Diesel said sincerely. The other grandchildren, 2 girls and another boy ranging from 10 to 15, hung back shyly until Diesel specifically greeted each one. "So," he said when the introductions were complete, "who wants a tour of the set?" The next few hours were a whirlwind of excitement. Diesel personally showed them around, explaining how stunts were planned and executed, introducing them to other actors and crew members, and even letting Miguel sit in one of the specially modified cars used for chase scenes. The stunt coordinator, a wiry man named Rick, took a special interest in Miguel after hearing about his dream of becoming a stunt driver. It takes years of training, Rick explained, showing Miguel the complex safety systems built into each vehicle. But if you're serious about it, stay in school, learn physics, it helps more than you'd think, and maybe start with some defensive driving courses when you're old enough. Miguel soaked up every word, his expression growing more determined by the minute. Meanwhile, Rosa found herself the center of attention among the cast and crew. The story of yesterday's confrontation had spread, growing more heroic with each retelling. "Is it true you hit one of them with a bread loaf?" asked a young actress during lunch. Rosa laughed. "It was the only weapon I had handy." "Resourceful?" The actress nodded approvingly. "I'm going to remember that for my next action scene." After lunch, they were invited to watch filming. The director, a serious woman with silver-streaked hair, welcomed them warmly. "Vin never brings visitors," she whispered to Rosa as they settled into special chairs behind the monitors. "You must have made quite an impression." Rosa watched in fascination as the scene unfolded. A tense conversation between Diesel's character and the film's antagonist, played by an actor she recognized from other movies. It took several takes, each slightly different, before the director called "Cut, print that one perfect." During a break in filming, Diesel rejoined them. "What do you think so far?" "It's amazing," Gloria said. "So much work goes into every second we see on screen. And it's hot," Raphael added, wiping his brow in the afternoon sun. Diesel laughed. "That it is. Movie magic doesn't cool things down, unfortunately." Miguel could barely contain himself. "The cars are awesome. Rick showed me how they rigged them for the jumps and everything. Did he now?" Diesel raised an eyebrow. "Rick doesn't usually share trade secrets. He said Miguel asked smart questions," Rosa explained proudly. "Said he might have a future in this business." Miguel beamed at his grandmother's praise. As the afternoon wore on, Rosa noticed Gloria watching her closely. When Diesel was called back to set, her daughter took the opportunity to sit beside her. "How are you really feeling, Mama?" Gloria asked quietly. "Yesterday must have been terrifying." Rosa patted her daughter's hand. "It was scary," she admitted, "but also invigorating, in a strange way." "Invigorating?" Gloria looked surprised. "I've been living the same day over and over since your father died," Rosa explained. "Safe, predictable days. And that's fine. I'm grateful for them. But yesterday reminded me that I'm still here, still capable of facing challenges." Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "You're the strongest person I know, Mama. Always have been." "I learned it from your father," Rosa said, touching her ring. "He never backed down from anything important." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching as the crew reset for another scene. "We worry about you living alone," Gloria finally said, "especially after hearing what happened." Rosa had been expecting this conversation. "I know you do, but I'm not ready for assisted living if that's what you're suggesting." "Actually," Gloria hesitated, "Raphael and I were thinking, the kids will be heading to college soon. Our house will feel too big. What if we looked for a place with a separate in-law unit? You'd have your independence, but we'd be right there if you needed anything." Rosa considered this. "I'd still have my own kitchen." Gloria laughed. "Of course, no one's trying to take your cooking away." "I'll think about it," Rosa promised. It wasn't a bad idea, she had to admit. Their conversation was interrupted by the assistant director calling for quiet on set. They watched as Diesel performed a complex driving stunt, the car sliding precisely to a stop inches from the camera. "One take," the director called out, clearly impressed. The crew burst into applause. When filming wrapped for the day, Diesel rejoined Rosa and her family. "I hope you enjoyed yourselves." The enthusiastic response made him laugh. "Good. I have one more surprise if you're not too tired, Rosa." "Not at all," she assured him, though her feet were beginning to ache from standing much of the day. Diesel led them to a large trailer set apart from the others. Inside was a comfortable lounge area where several other actors from the film were gathered around a cake decorated with sunflowers. "What's this?" Rosa asked in surprise. "A little celebration," Diesel explained. For the woman who taught some neighborhood bullies a lesson they won't forget. Everyone clapped as Rosa was led to a seat of honor. The cake was cut, glasses of champagne and sparkling cider were distributed, and Diesel raised a toast. To Rosa Martinez, he said, his deep voice filling the trailer, who reminds us all that courage isn't about size or strength or age, it's about heart. To Rosa, everyone echoed. Rosa felt tears prick her eyes as she sipped her champagne. She had never expected to be celebrated by a room full of movie stars, at her age. The party continued, with Rosa's grandchildren collecting autographs and selfies with the actors. Miguel couldn't stop grinning as he talked stunts with Rick and two of the stunt drivers. Gloria leaned close to her mother. "This is surreal. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up." "Me too," Rosa admitted. "But I think it's really happening." Across the room, Diesel was deep in conversation with Rafael, occasionally glancing over at Rosa with a thoughtful expression. Later, he made his way back to her side. "Your son-in-law mentioned you might be moving in with them soon," he said. Rosa nodded. "They suggested it today. I'm considering it." "It sounds like a good arrangement," Diesel commented. "But I was thinking, the neighborhood where you live now isn't as safe as it used to be." "True," Rosa sighed. "Things change. I've set up a college scholarship for Miguel," Diesel said, changing the subject abruptly. "If he stays serious about stunt work, it'll cover his education. Rick has agreed to mentor him too." Rosa stared at him in shock. "That's incredibly generous." Diesel shrugged. "Not really. Talent should be nurtured, and speaking of nurturing..." He handed her a business card. "This is the number of my personal security team. If you ever feel unsafe in your neighborhood again, day or night, call them. They'll respond faster than the police." Rosa started to protest, but Diesel held up a hand. "Just until you move in with Gloria and Rafael, please. It would make me feel better." She accepted the card, touched by his concern. "Thank you." As the evening wound down, Diesel arranged for cars to take Rosa and her family home. Before they left, he pulled Miguel aside for a quiet conversation that left the teenager looking stunned, but determined. In the car, Gloria asked her son what Diesel had said. "He told me that being strong isn't just about muscles," Miguel replied, thoughtfully. "It's about standing up for people who need help, like Grandma did with the sunflower. And he said if I want to work in stunts, I need to be the kind of person who makes others feel safe." Rosa smiled, hearing echoes of Roberto's values and Diesel's advice to her grandson. When they reached Rosa's apartment, Gloria and Rafael walked her to her door. "We'll start looking at houses with in-law units next week," Gloria promised. "No rush, but maybe by Christmas?" Rosa nodded. "That sounds perfect." She hugged her daughter tightly. "Thank you for understanding that I still need some independence." "You've earned it, Mama," Gloria said. "Besides, I'm pretty sure you can take care of yourself. You fought off criminals with a sunflower, after all." They laughed together, and Rosa waved goodbye as they headed back to the car where the children waited. Inside her apartment, Rosa carefully removed her wedding ring and chain, placing them in their velvet pouch for safekeeping. The events of the past 2 days felt dreamlike now, but the new chain and the business card from Diesel's security team were tangible reminders that it had all really happened. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Tomorrow she would return to her routine, coffee, perhaps a walk, though maybe on busier streets for now. Maybe call her friend Luisa to share the incredible story. But something had changed. The world felt a little bigger again, full of possibilities she hadn't considered in years. "You wouldn't believe the adventure I've had, Roberto," she said to her husband's photo. "Or maybe you would. You always said life never stops surprising you if you keep your eyes open." On her windowsill, the sunflower from yesterday had perked up in its vase, reaching toward the last rays of evening light. It reminded her of herself. Perhaps a bit battered, but still standing, still turning toward the sun. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at Rosa's door. Inside was a framed photo taken on the movie set. Rosa surrounded by her family, with Vin Diesel standing beside her, all of them smiling broadly. A note was attached. To the strongest woman I know. Thank you for reminding me what real courage looks like. Your friend always, Vin. Rosa placed the photo on her mantle, where Roberto could see it too. In 2 months, she would move into the in-law unit at Gloria and Rafael's new house. Miguel had started taking physics more seriously at school and had joined a young drivers' safety program on weekends. The bullies who had threatened Rosa had been sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling. And somewhere in Hollywood, a famous action star was telling friends about the elderly woman who fought off thieves with a sunflower and taught him more about courage in one day than he had learned in decades of making movies. Life was full of unexpected connections, Rosa reflected as she touched her wedding ring, now hanging from its strong new chain. Sometimes the most unlikely people cross paths at just the right moment, changing each other's stories forever. She had gone from being an ordinary grandmother to someone whose story would be told and retold, inspiring others to stand their ground, to protect what matters most to them. Not bad for an 83-year-old woman who had only wanted to buy a loaf of bread.